There's a strange moment after you've lived in Britain for a while. It doesn't happen when you first arrive or when you visit, the big famous landmarks. Well, sometimes in those moments, depends on the landmark. But it tends to happen a little bit later after you've been here for a while and you have your everyday routine kind of sneaking in and, you're just walking somewhere, maybe the supermarket, and you're not really paying any attention to the things around you. Maybe you got your headphones in. But then a building catches your eye. It's the date on a building, or a little plaque on a building, a date above a doorway, I've noticed many times. Then suddenly you realize, especially as an American, that this whole place is older than your entire country. And nobody is even talking about how old everything is. It's amazing. I think that surprised me so much after living here for a year. Can't believe it's been a year. But it's not the famous history. It's, not the castles on the map that you have to go check out. It's not the things you would expect to surprise you. It's just how casually history exists. You don't have to even go looking for it. It just shows up in your everyday life here. It's everywhere you look, quite literally. And once you start looking for it, you can't stop seeing it. Every block you walk, every place you look, every building you go into. It's a name carved in stone or a random tombstone that happens to be at the park for some reason. Something that just feels slightly out of place around some modern buildings sometimes. And your brain just starts asking questions. At least mine does. That's how my brain goes. It starts asking, well, how old is that? Or why is that here? Who built that? I think the first time I really noticed this is when I went to Greenwich last summer to film my walking tour video that's on the channel if you want to watch it. I wanted to go see the Prime Meridian line. That was the plan. A couple other little stops peppered throughout, the Cutty Sark. But once I got there, I started looking around and, looking at the Royal Observatory, the naval history that exists there, where exploration quite literally began for so many places right in that spot. And suddenly one place is 10 different stories, not just one anymore. There's so much layers to it. And then this just started happening all the time. I'd go to film something, I'd notice something that wasn't on the list of places I wanted to stop, and while I'm editing the footage, and I have to go home and research what I just found. And suddenly, with one small detail, I'm suddenly down a rabbit hole of Tudor politics or medieval trade routes or why the church field is lower than the pavement on the side. And that curiosity turned into something else pretty quickly. Because once you start falling into these rabbit holes and you just want to keep digging deeper and deeper, well, that's where Readly actually came in for me, and they're kind enough to be today's sponsor for the video and an app I actually really enjoy using. It's an app that gives you access to over 8,000 different magazines and articles, and it's all in one place. So instead of opening a million different tabs like I was doing, I can actually just bookmark these and find articles and magazines that are relative to what I'm looking into. I can just open one app, fall down my rabbit hole into whatever I've just discovered and find plenty of credible sources on this. What I like about it the most is how easy it is for me to keep falling into my curiosity and finding out more information. I think about when I visited Bath. After that, I wanted to fall down into the rabbit hole even more of Roman Britain and how these settlements shaped cities that still exist today. You've got things like BBC History Magazine, you have travel magazines, science magazines, culture magazines, basically anything that can help you understand what you're actually looking around at in person. You can download issues so you have them available offline. You can bookmark articles. You can open all those tabs and have your bookmarks there, which is great because I end up saving a ton of articles and magazines for these videos that I bring to you right here. And right now, they are kind enough to offer 2 months free for my viewers. So you can also find these beautiful rabbit holes with me, you can just scan the QR code in the video or look in the description below for a link. And also, I'll have it in my pinned comments so it's super easy for you to find. But I highly recommend this. I personally use it and I love it. But I think once you start looking at Britain this way, that I've been, this rabbit hole approach to history, um, one thing really changed how I look at Britain, and I was so excited to experience this. And it was not just going to a pub, but what looks like a normal old pub. People just drinking pints, hanging out. Doesn't seem like anything unusual. And then you start to notice a small sign on the wall or a date on the sign hanging out front. And that date is the 1600s. And that happened to me when I went to the George pub. It was surreal to think that people have been sitting in this very building, having pints, hanging out for longer than the United States has even existed. And nobody in the room is reacting to it. They're just coming after work, having a casual pint, like it's just always been here because it has. Nobody in the room is thinking about these things. I'm just looking at every detail of the room. And that's when something else really clicked. This just isn't special here. It's just normal. And once you realize that, you really see it everywhere. Every old building is just normal. Now, in the United States, it's not that old. If a building is 150 years old, it's a really big deal. We preserve it, we restore it, we put little plaques on it, sometimes even if it's just from the 1950s. But in Britain, a 150-year-old building might just be a bakery or a Tesco or somebody's house, and nobody is thinking twice about it. When I went to Cockington last summer, at a village down in Devon, it felt like stepping into a fairy tale time machine with all the little thatched roofs and a, a blacksmith still working in his shop, people just walking dogs, buying ice cream cones in the park. That contrast is what makes this all so strange and wonderful to me because the history here isn't separate from daily life. History here is your daily life. And then I went to York, and you start seeing just even more layers of everything around you. Walking through the shambles, the buildings that have been there since the 1300s. They're leaning toward each other slightly because of a strange tax rule at the time that taxed you on the ground level footprint of your building and not the second level or first level or any level above the ground level. So they would extend those levels to get more space. And it looks like they're just leaning into you. Those buildings were standing centuries before America was even a thought. Now, you're not just looking at history anymore. You're standing inside of multiple centuries all at once. And then it just gets even more strange because of these layers. Some of these layers are Roman, like Roman history completely changed the world, and obviously Britain as well. But in America, Roman history is something I learned about in my Latin class. Mi amo es nebulosa delicula, just so you know. But in Britain, Roman history is physical. It's here. You can visit it. There's many places. There's a wall just next to the Tower Bridge underground station. Being in York and walking the walls of a former Roman fortress that's 2,000 years old. To put that into perspective, that's about 8 times older than the United States. That's not just old, that is a completely different scale of time. When I went to Bath, the Romans built these baths 2,000 years ago, tapping into hot springs, and people are still visiting that same place today, that same location, and it even has the same purpose. Now, as a filmmaker myself, that level of continuity is hard to process. It's hard enough to make short films keep continuity, let alone a location being the same business essentially for 2,000 years. But the strangest part isn't just how old things are here. It's how people use them, I think. In York, like I said, you can walk these medieval city walls. They're not just a tourist attraction. They're part of people's everyday life. People jog on them, people use them to walk to work, people use them as a shortcut to the pub. But in America, something like that would be so protected, and you probably wouldn't even be able to walk on it or look at it, and they'd probably charge you admissions to just see it somehow. But here it's part of everyday life. So magical. I know this is like the dorkiest video, but I'm just really excited. And the other thing here is the art of churches. Churches in America don't really have a lot of history or art. A lot of things about the Puritans were minimal on the art side. But here, some of the churches are from the 1100s. That's nearly 900 years old. That's before the Magna Carta or even before the Renaissance. And people still use them every week for their intended purpose. After a year of living here, I think the biggest thing I realized about Britain is you don't just have history here, you live alongside of history here. In America, history is something you go and visit on a school trip. In Britain, it's something you walk past every single day, or you work in it, or you live in it. And from the outside, it just feels extraordinary. But here it's just a Tuesday. And for someone from a really young country, it just changes your entire perspective on humanity because it reminds you that there was something so much bigger than any single generation. And in Britain, you're quietly just carrying that history forward every single day in your normal life. And you realize that being here, you're kind of just a blip on that timeline of humanity. You're important to it. You paint the full image like a Van Gogh in just a stroke. You're existing where millions of people have lived full, long, rich lives. It really is a magical freaking feeling. And to be part of it makes me feel like I'm part of humanity's story being here in a surreal way that you don't get by living in America. Oh, I'm curious. What is the oldest building where you live? Because after a year in Britain, I'm starting to realize that every single town here, every village has centuries of history just hidden in plain sight. So let me know in the comments below. And thank you so much for making me feel so welcomed and a part of the story. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, do that little hype thing. I really appreciate it. And thank you for following me on my adventure. Until then, I'll see you in the next one, or maybe in your town. Thanks.